G'day. G'day. How you going? On something different today because I've been meaning to do this for ages, but now seems to be about the right time before the season starts. Um, what have the 49ers and Farke ever done for us? Even now, as we come towards a new season, there are still people who just want to bash Farke and the 49ers and are not happy about anything. And I thought I'd address that in a typical Monty Python sort of way, What have the 49ers and Farke ever done for us? Because it's a fair question, isn't it? Because depending on which corner of the Leeds United universe you happen to inhabit, you'd think they'd either done absolutely nothing or they've transformed the club. Let's have a look, shall we? Let's dive into it. First of all, they brought stability. And I don't think we should underestimate how important that is. When Farke walked into Leeds United, this was a club that had been through an incredible, turbulent period. Managers coming and going, players coming and going, recruitment changing direction. The club itself lacked any real sense of continuity and to a certain extent, a certain lack of community. The behind the scenes, the 49ers were trying to put foundations in place. Farke was the man at the front of it, the face, the manager, the person responsible for what happened on the pitch. And from the very first interview I heard from Daniel Farke, I believed that he and the 49ers were a perfect fit for Leeds United. There was something about the way he spoke, the responsibility, the history, the supporters, the standards, and most importantly, the team coming before the individual. It reminded me of something from the Revy era. Not because we were suddenly recreating the 70s, we're not, but because there was a feeling of togetherness, players playing for each other, players playing for the shirt, players understanding that Leeds United was bigger than the individual. And that, for me, is where the phrase, side before self every time, comes in. But what have they actually done? So, what have the 49ers actually done for us in Farke? Well, they've stabilised the club, that's one. They've created a plan, that's two. And perhaps most importantly, they stuck to it. The plan wasn't simple. The plan wasn't simply, let's throw money at it, hope for the best. There was a clear objective, get the club fiscally stable. For those that don't understand fiscally, it means financially stable. Get stability back into the football operation, build something sustainable, and ultimately get Leeds United back in the Premier League. 3 years later, job done. That doesn't mean everything was perfect. Of course it wasn't. There were mistakes, there were frustrations, there were players who didn't work out, there were decisions that we all could question. That's football, but the bigger picture, the plan worked. Leeds United are back in the Premier League, and we're not back here simply hoping to survive or to make up the numbers. We're building. Is that all? No, there's more. Ellen Road. We're talking about major redevelopment, an increase in capacity of almost 20,000. And that's not just putting a few extra seats in. There's an investment in the future of Leeds United. It's saying we expect this football club to grow. And then there's the commercial side. More sponsors, more revenue, more financial strength, and ultimately more ability to compete. Because here's the thing. Football has changed. You simply can't live on history. You can't live on reputation. And you certainly can't live on nostalgia. Leeds United have to compete in the modern Premier League. That means building infrastructure and financial strength to support the club. The players. And then we come to the football. This summer, this summer, we're seeing a concerted effort to bring in quality. But I don't think it's simply about buying the biggest names. It's about buying the right players. The players who understand what Leeds is about. The players who understand the mentality, the culture, and the expectations. The responsibility of wearing that Leeds United shirt. Because I don't want 11 superstars. I want a team. 11 players who understand their jobs, players who work for each other, players who understand that the badge comes before the individual. Side before self every time. And isn't that what we've been asking for? Well, let's look at the bigger picture. So, what have the 49ers and Farke ever done for us? Well, they brought stability, as I've said. They brought structure. They brought a long-term vision. They've helped rebuild the relationship between the club and its supporters. They've got us back in the Premier League. They're expanding Ellen Road. They're increasing the club's commercial strength. They're investing in the squad. And they're trying to build a culture around what Leeds United should represent. That's quite a list. But here's the important bit. None of it guarantees success. That's where we have to be sensible. The Premier League doesn't care about our history. It doesn't care about how big Ellen Road is. It doesn't care how passionate our supporters are. It certainly doesn't care what happened in 1972. We have to earn our place every single week, and that's where the next phase begins. So, the next phase. The first phase was about rebuilding, stabilising, getting the club back on its feet, getting Leeds United back into the Premier League. Job done. Now the challenge changes. Now it's about establishing Leeds United as a sustainable Premier League club. And then see how far we can take it. That's going to require patience. And one of my favourite words is you got to have patience. Let's see how it goes. There's a certain Leeds bro, Darren, who should learn patience. It's going to require recruitment. It's going to require the manager, the players, the owners, supporters, all pulling in the same direction. There will be bumps along the way. There will be arguments. There will be bad performances. There will be players we don't like. There will be decisions we disagree with. That is what supporting Leeds United is all about. We don't have to agree with everything, but perhaps we should occasionally step back, look at the bigger picture, because sometimes we spend too much time arguing about the individual tree that we forget that we're actually standing in a bloody great forest. Now, before anyone says it, yes, I know they haven't got everything right. The 49ers have made mistakes. Farke has made mistakes. Recruitment hasn't always worked. There have been players we've signed who haven't delivered. There have been decisions we've questioned, performances we've wondered what the hell is going on. And that's absolutely fair. Supporting Leeds United doesn't mean blindly agreeing with everything the club does. Criticism is part of being a supporter. But it has to be sensible criticism. There's a difference between criticising a decision and dismissing the entire project. And that's where I think sometimes we lose perspective. Because if we're going to judge the 49ers of Farke, let's judge them on the whole journey, not one transfer, one result, one press conference, or a player's performance. Look at where we started, look at where we are now, and then ask ourselves honestly, has the club moved forward? I think the answer is bloody obvious. So now we come to the final question. What have the 49ers and Farke ever done for us? They've given us stability, they've given us a plan, they've given us belief, they brought us back to the Premier League, they're expanding our home, they're strengthening the football club commercially, they're trying to build a squad around the right mentality, they're trying to put Leeds United before everything else. We go back to side before self every time. Have they got it right? Of course not. Will they get everything right? Of course not. Nobody does. But from the moment Daniel Farke first spoke about Leeds United, I believe he and the 49ers were a good fit. And I still do. Because I don't think we're simply trying to build a football team. We're trying to rebuild a football club. And perhaps that's the biggest thing they've done for us. They've given Leeds United something we haven't had for a long time, a future. So what have the 49ers and Farke ever done for us? Well, quite a lot, actually. Marching on together. Take care of yourself. Have a great week. And I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.